Have you got a Royal Caribbean cruise booked for this summer, but you got to fly to it? Good luck. Today, I've got some tips on how to plan your summer flying. Here we go. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We almost always just delve and focus on, of course, cruise tips here on Royal Caribbean Blog, but this summer, boy, flying has changed quite a bit. Now, let's be fair. Flying has always been a little bit of an issue when it comes to making sure you get to the place on time. Flight cancellations and delays are not new, but it seems like in the summer of 2022, flying is just a whole other ball game, and it is evolved or devolved, I'm not exactly sure, into a different area where the chances of a delay or cancellation, or both, seem to be higher than normal. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the airlines and how to fly basically this summer because a lot has changed. There's been a lot more cancellations, less pilots, whatever the reason is. We're not going to get into that here. But what I am here to tell you is some tips for how to plan your flights. If you've got a cruise coming up, whether it's this fall, this summer, or really anytime soon, I would advocate a couple of issues that go beyond just simply flying in before your cruise. We'll talk about that as well. But the current conditions dictate you take a different approach to flying. And so if you've got a cruise coming up, I wanted to share some cruise tips with you as it relates to flying to make sure you make your cruise vacation. Let's start with number one, and that is if you can avoid flying, don't fly at all. Listen, there's an issue that's going on right now, as we talked about, and you've probably seen in the news. So if you live close enough that driving is at all possible, I might advocate doing that. Now listen, sitting in the car for 5, 6, 8 hours, not ideal, but at least you'll make it down there because, of course, you're kind of in control of your own destiny when you drive yourself. If your cruise port is 7 hours or less from where you live in terms of driving there, you might seriously consider driving down yourself and being able to avoid flying altogether. While there could be traffic or your car could break down, those situations are less likely than a cancellation or delay or lost baggage as it relates to currently. So if it's at all possible, you might rethink your flying plan, especially if you live on the East Coast and you can drive down to Florida. Might not be a bad idea. Also, don't overlook taking the train. The trains in the United States especially aren't that fast, especially compared to in Europe or Japan. But regardless of that fact, the trains don't have nearly as much issues as flying right now, so it might be an option for you. Number two, if you are going to fly, obviously it almost goes without saying, but I still got to say it, do not fly the same day of your cruise. There are still people who are flying the same day as their cruise departs, and boy, are you taking your cruise vacation in your own hands when you're doing this. The issue that you're having right now is just a lot of logistical problems that the airlines are facing, and there's a whole lot that goes into that. But if it's all possible, not only should you at least fly in a day ahead of time, I would advocate actually flying in at least 2 days before your cruise. If you come in at least 2 days before your cruise, number one, you start your vacation a little bit earlier. That's also great. But also, if there is a full cancellation or a delay that really goes into the next day, you're not really playing with fire in that case because flying in a day ahead of time, yeah, if your flight's canceled, you have the next day to be able to fly in. But again, now you're really back is against the wall. And previously, when I talked about flying in a day ahead of time, there was a pretty good chance that you'd be okay with that first flight out. Nowadays, there's a little more risk involved, so 2 days out is really not a bad idea. This is especially important if you live in a city, or you're flying out of a city, I should say, that has only maybe 1 or 2 flights a day. If you're coming from the Northeast and you're coming from New York City and you're flying down to Florida, okay, there's a bazillion flights, right? But if you live in Kansas, if you live in Ohio, if you live in Reno, Nevada, there may not be that many flights available to you. So do yourself a favor, come in at least a couple days ahead of time, so that way you have a chance at ensuring that you have the most buffer available for you to make your cruise vacation. I understand this is not always possible because 2 days ahead of time means 2 extra days probably of vacation time, and vacation time is very valuable, and 2 extra days, it goes a long way. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, if missing your cruise would be a major problem, and I think it would be, it might not be a bad idea to come in at least 2 days before your cruise to ensure that you're good to go. My next tip for airline travel currently these days is definitely give yourself way more time in the airport. Traditionally you might show up, 90 minutes, 2 hours before your flight, but you might want to give yourself a little more time to ensure that you have no rushing going on because there can be delays in the airport itself. There's a lot of people that are flying right now, and it's more so than ever before. This isn't even like we're talking about depressed levels compared to 2019. There are a lot of days this summer we've already seen numbers that have been beyond the number of people that passed through TSA checkpoints in 2019. So there's a lot of people flying. Give yourself extra time. And if you have a long layover or you're coming into your airport just ridiculously early, then you might consider also getting a lounge pass to one of the lounges if it's available for you to purchase, so that way you have somewhere more relaxing to go to. When you're picking your flight, my advice, try to get the earliest flight of the day. Ideally, you want the flight that is super early in the morning on an airplane that was already there from the night before. Essentially, you want that flight where the plane landed the day before and you're on that first flight out. By having the equipment there, the airplane, that's one less major factor. There's no delays that are going to stop your plane from being there on time. Of course, if there are issues with personnel, totally different issue, but pick that first flight of the day. In addition, when you're flying in the summertime, thunderstorms develop later in the afternoon. So if you fly out in the morning, there's a really good chance you'll make it there on time. Next up, of course, kind of piggybacking on that, get a direct flight. If at all possible, always do direct flights. I understand that if you pick a flight that maybe has a layover somewhere, it might be cheaper than a direct flight. But you really don't want to play games with this right now. It is absolutely worthwhile to get a direct flight, if at all possible. This next airline tip, I'm not sure I could actually do, but I'm going to recommend it anyway because it's a good idea, and that is to try, at all possible, to travel with a carry-on. I know it's kind of strange to hear somebody talk about you bringing a carry-on only for a cruise vacation, but it is possible to do. There are a lot of people that do it. So if it's within the realms of possibilities, it would be a really good idea to have a carry-on luggage only to bring with you. That way you don't have to check luggage, and that way no one's going to lose your luggage, except for you, of course. So bring it with you on board the plane. It might be a really good strategy, not only for being able to bring it on the airplane, but when you get on the cruise ship, you can actually just bring it right back up to the ship when you board, right up to your room, no waiting for luggage either. So not only is packing light for your flight a great strategy, it's also not a bad idea for your cruise because that way you're not going to overpack, and there's certainly some good strategies for ensuring that you don't overpack on a cruise, and that way a lot less luggage and weight to have to deal with. Another tip that I've shared before, but again, equally important now, is talk about having travel insurance. I've always talked about the importance of having travel insurance, and I tell people all the time, it's about your risk tolerance. And I wouldn't sit here and tell them that everybody should get travel insurance, but boy, is it really a good idea. Usually when I talk about travel insurance, I'm talking in the context of going on a cruise and what could possibly happen during your cruise, but travel insurance also covers your travel elsewhere, like on airplanes and flight cancellations and delays. Having travel insurance is nearly critical right now. And if you're flying and going on a cruise, boy, I cannot understate the value of getting a good travel insurance plan. Now, remember, not all travel insurance is the same. Look at the policy, look what it covers, look when it kicks in. Make sure you pick the right policy for you. Do not assume, oh, I'm just going to get a travel insurance plan because they're all the same. Not the case at all. They're very different. Something else you might want to consider when you're talking about picking a flight is travel midweek. If you can't postpone your flight, then try to fly on days like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Saturdays to avoid peak times. By going on those days, there's less travel, less business travelers, less people to contend with, means possibly less delays in the airport. That might not be a bad idea. And my last tip for flying in summer 2022 actually doesn't have to do anything with the airlines, it's with your hotel plans, and that is book refundable hotel plans. Think about it. If you're booking a flight and your flight gets canceled and you can't go to the next day, if you book non-refundable hotel, you're going to be paying for a hotel you're not actually staying at. And trust me, these hotels will not refund your money. So your best bet is to book refundable hotels and car rentals for that matter. Do yourself a favor and book the refundable hotel rate. Hotel rates are so volatile that they can change all the time. So even if you find a really good non-refundable deal, honestly, it may even change and get better with refundable later on. So keep checking back, but book refundable so that way if your air travel plans change, your hotel plans can follow as well. So there you go. There's my summer travel survival guide for flying in 2022. Hopefully these tips will ensure that you make your cruise vacation this year. Let me know in the comments below any summer travel flying tips that I may have missed because you know what? I could certainly benefit from them as well. If you like this video, found it helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your notifications so that way YouTube lets you know we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We'll talk again real soon.